Just under 3 months ago, I embarked on my first ever cycling expedition to the UK coast. One sitting, one day, one bike, 12 hours of cycling, across hundreds of villages, fields, woods and towns. Always something new to meet the eye. From my home in the city of Sheffield, up northeast to the flowering town of Scarborough, only 188 kilometres, 118 miles away. Today I am looking back on that journey and sharing all I learned, all the mistakes I made that delayed me and caused me to arrive late in the night, and all I would change for future riding. So many villages I saw, so many people I met, such beautiful views along the way, so many new towns explored. My early morning, my rigorous route planning and my fast-paced cycling were met with unforeseen delays and multiple road closures. A couple of bad packing choices resulted in a very heavy rucksack which weighed down on my shoulders for hours and hours and caused a lot of pain. Overall, my goal to arrive in Scarborough before dark did not happen, as I rode through the dark roads of North Yorkshire for a good 3 hours, cold and weak, arriving only past midnight. Let's go back to the start. I woke up around 6:30, and I did not feel well. I spent around an hour getting ready, eating, and frantically going through my stuff, worried I might have missed something out. Sooner or later, I realized too much time was passing, so I got out, hopped on my bike, and with a deep breath, off I went. I started off really fast. Although I was cold and still half asleep, I was flying. As the chilly morning wind knocked me awake, I was slowly warming up for the day.
So I've set off. I've just gone past Darnell. I'm heading towards Valley's Entertainment and Meadow Hall. So we've started finally. I woke up at 6:20 in the morning today. Left at just before 8 o'clock. Still had to do quite a bit of packing beforehand. And 6 hours of sleep. I felt quite bad, but it went away after I had a strong cup of coffee. So I'm really excited, really nervous as well. My GPS says 8 hours 15 minutes from here on. It'll probably end up being a little bit more, a few hours over. But we're gonna go and see how I can do.
I was on it. I felt so strong in my legs. I felt so confident in my riding. Nothing had gone wrong, yet. As I passed Darnell and then Meadow Hall, I began making my way out of Sheffield, following a trail along the River Don for a few miles. It was a very pleasant experience, and the air was very fresh. I met a very speedy cyclist and pushed on hard so I can keep up with him.
Going past the River Don now. I've got 93 miles left, so around 150 kilometers left or something. Going pretty fast.
After speeding through a good 2 miles on the trail, I realized that the exit was blocked off due to some construction. I should have known as I forced myself across a stone wall, clearly signaling a closure ahead, 4 miles behind. Nevertheless, I continued, yet on entering Thorpe Hesley, had to fix my chain that came off.
Things are luckily starting to get back on track now. I'm making progress. I've gone past Thorpe Hesley and I'm on my way to Hoyland, so funnily enough, the exact same journey so far as my 100 kilometers. That's because I had to change my way because of the construction, but done 15 miles, 95 miles more. So as I said, a longer route.
From here on was probably my most pleasant and carefree phase of the whole trip. I was passing from village to village, Hood Hill, Wentworth and Elscar, where I took a quick toilet trip, and from then on going mainly through the Transpennine Trail, a series of paths for pedestrians, cyclists and horse riders, spreading across the whole country. It was a lovely atmosphere, but after enough miles on the same woodland trail, it started feeling extremely tedious, as I was on the same path and the same surroundings for miles on end and nothing was changing. Despite snacking regularly, there was a point where I stopped to eat as I was really hungry, in the middle of some forest north of Conisbrough. I chilled but then realised just how late it was, and how little distance I'd covered. I started panicking. I rejoined the River Don once more and carried along a river path. The exit was blocked off, but the diversion led me to a pub where a kind lady filled my bottle up, and my pace improved as I left the trails and went back on the roads for a short while. One of the funniest moments of the trip was when I got stuck in a field not knowing which way I'm supposed to be heading, and it took some exploring to find the path which was hidden behind the bush. This meant I had to get my bag and my bike over the barbed wire fence. What makes me laugh the most now is the fact I was worried I would get an electric shock if I scratched the fence, and did all kinds of weird acrobatics to avoid it. I was on my way to making progress again, but this meant I had to once more go into the most rural areas of farmland, after waiting with many others for over 15 minutes at a rail crossing. I was anxious about the time, so despite my various pains, I hurried through the farmland roads where I bumped into a man who, despite his age, was still cycling strong, and we carried on together for a bit. I became frustrated as the rocky ground was an extreme hazard to my thin road tyres. I was getting more and more sore at this point. My bag really did start weighing down on my shoulders and digging into my skin. But I did have the surprise of seeing some chickens scuttling around the road.
Oh my days, I can't go. It's so windy. I can't move my legs. My back is, my elbows are hurt, not elbows. My shoulders are hurting so bad because of the bag. And I feel like I've done so much, but there's still 73 miles left. And it just makes me want to cry.
It was not looking good for me. I had significantly slowed down. My legs were terribly inflamed. I wanted to just collapse on the road. So despite my rush to progress and already too many breaks, I was forced to stop. I was in a small village, Braithwaite, near Doncaster, and I found myself sitting on the ground, leaning against a house. I was questioning my choices and considered going back home, as I thought there was no way I will make it to Scarborough at this rate. Eventually I went through it again. Making my seat slightly higher relieved some soreness, but mentally I was drained after following another rocky river path for a good 3 miles without fail. I was pushing hard for miles upon miles. My mind became very cloudy, and I was in a strange mental zone where I wasn't fully there, but the repetitive cycle of pedalling and pedalling, even through massive pain, was the only thing my mind was processing. This is why you should not pack too much, and even so, not throw it all on your back, but distribute it across your bike. I had done almost 100 kilometers at this point, so I was getting to the halfway line. All I needed was a long break, and that's what I had. I stopped in Selby and sat down in Selby Park, got my bag off, rested my legs that were twitching from the strain, and ate. Never have I felt a bigger relief than what I felt sitting down in that half an hour. Over this rest period, an elderly couple who were passing by started speaking to me. They asked me about my cycling, about my ambitions and about my studies. Then it became known that the man was a close friend of Tommy Simpson, a former Tour de France champion of the mid-20th century who tragically passed away in the Alps during the 1967 Tour de France. After leaving Selby, I was on my way to York and came across some nice paths. I was now in top form because of my rest and meal. I had a 5-mile-long straight route to follow, and I absolutely ploughed through. I saw some squirrels and some wild hares. It felt like a while, but it was the fastest 5 miles of the whole trip, and I made up loads of time. I was now joining onto a road straight to York, and it wasn't long before I reached it, although I had to be on quite a fast road. It was here that I saw the first mention of Scarborough. That was a sign to me that I can make it. My water bottles filled up for the second time today, and without any stopping, in a massive hurry, I made my way out of York. From here on, my boost from the rest began to wear off, and I began experiencing soreness worse than before. Cumulative soreness, of course. It was getting late and I still had the final 40% of the journey to go, the worst part. I tried to race another cyclist for some time, which at least upped my pace for a short while. Not long after leaving York and leaving the main road into the countryside, once more I was forced to stop in the middle of a track and catch up with more food. I felt absolutely exhausted at this point. Not just sore, but exhausted. I had still 40 miles left to go, and there was about 2 more hours of daylight left. It became really cold as the evening air set in, and I put on my coat. I had absolutely no motivation to carry on, and wanted this whole ordeal to end. So to take my mind off the pain and have some motivation, I put my headphones in and started listening to my favourite albums. This was like another boost, but this time mental. Over the next 45 minutes, I would cycle at around a constant pace of 20 kilometers an hour. The sunset was magnificent. It was the highlight for me. It took me by surprise and didn't disappoint. It gave me hope, but also made me worried about the dark nights incoming. I utilised the cubicle I found by a construction site, and then pressed on. From now on to the end came the hardest part of the whole trip. 30 miles of cycling, 25 miles of total darkness and cold air. I knew I made a mistake by not bringing gloves, as my hands suffered in cold for the next 3 hours. I was starving once more, but was now on my last supply of food. I didn't eat any more for the whole night, but just cycled without thinking about anything.
So unfortunately out of the town and into this dark road. I think this is going to be the last nature reserve farm.
As the major cycle path I was meant to take for the remaining 15 miles was nowhere to be found, I had no other choice but to join onto the A64, a massive dual carriageway resembling a motorway, with speed limits up to 60 miles an hour. It was a terrifying experience, being on such a fast road while weak, cold and hungry, with cars and lorries speeding past. But it was the only road that led straight to my destination, and I pushed on through the agony over the next hour. I had my head down and was saying prayers to pass the time and keep my brain engaged, until 1.5 miles away from the hotel, I took a slip road to a McDonald's. Here I felt like every small thing was the biggest blessing, such as the lights, or being able to sit down and not move. It was the wisest decision to pop in there, as it was the closest thing to a proper meal that I had the whole day, and the hot tea relieved lots of pain. Despite being worn out to my core, the knowledge that my hotel is 10 minutes of cycling away gave me enough willpower to ride there without any complaining. Never before have I felt so blessed to walk into a comfy warm room, or felt so in need of a warm shower. These experiences really do open your eyes to how blessed we all are with what we have, and while I recognise my drive and perseverance, half of the problems I have could have been avoided by not wearing a bag on my back, and instead making reasonable adjustments to my bike. Along with being more time aware and prepared for any weather, this is what I will take into my next ride, whenever it may be.